Sweden is known for many things. ABBA, IKEA, winter depression. But one thing that Sweden isn't known for is food. At least not in a positive way. Today I'm visiting the Stockholm Food and Wine exhibition, and I'm also gonna dive into the question of why Swedish food has such a bad reputation. First of all, let's talk about what people think of Swedish food. Does it really have a bad reputation? Well, yes and no. Everyone knows about Swedish meatballs, of course, but other than that, knowledge about Swedish cuisine is pretty limited. Some people online praise Scandinavian food in general and talk about the fresh ingredients and how healthy it is. Well, then they should try raggmunk with pork and try to claim that it's healthy in any way possible. It's basically fried bacon and fried potatoes. Very tasty, of course, but likely to take years of your lifespan. Some people also claim that Swedish food is bland and tasteless, when it's not outright disgusting. Everybody's heard about surströmming, I would assume. Swedish fermented herring, one of the smelliest dishes in the world. And a lot of Swedish food is pretty bland. I wouldn't call it tasteless per se, but there's not as many spices used as in other cultures. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's tasteless though. Italian food, for example, is praised for its natural ingredients and not for its use of spices. But when you see Swedish falukorv med stuvade makaroner, then it's hard to argue that it's not a bit bland. Falukorv is a traditional sausage in Sweden. It's not exactly full of flavor, but it is filling. And stuvade makaroner is a creamy milk-stewed pasta that mostly tastes of pasta and milk. So there might be some truth to Sweden's reputation as a land of bland and tasteless food. But let's see what others think. What do you think about Swedish food?
Yeah, I think Swedish food is very fun, and you can do like so many things with the stuff we have. I'm very young, but I learned so much about like food from my dad and like that. So I think it's very fun to do new stuff with the old ingredients that we use.
Oh, so innovate but using the traditional ingredients.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you think that Swedish food is a bit bland and tasteless?
No, I don't think so. Swedes have many good tastes, smells good and taste good. I think so. We have many Swedish flavors, so I think it's good. We're traditional in north, for example, we have hjortron. I think it's very good taste, so many cookings. It's very good, so many things, and to cheese is very, very nice.
Let's talk a bit more about different Swedish dishes, aside from meatballs and the other ones I mentioned. Sweden is a long country that stretches from the Arctic in the north to the south that has a relatively mild climate. And it's a country that's heavily affected by the seasons. Winters are cold and harsh, and the summers are warm and pleasant. That means that food availability varies a lot, depending on the time of the year. Well, maybe not these days, because we can import food or grow stuff in greenhouses. But it was a deciding factor in what foods became typically Swedish. Seasonal food is a big thing. Nettle soup used to be popular in spring, for example, and crayfish is still popular in August. June is plagued with strawberries everywhere, so you get a lot of strawberry cakes and strawberry desserts. And the traditional Swedish Christmas ham is eaten in winter, because that's when you slaughter the pigs. But most of all, Sweden has a lot of coastline, so fish has always been an important ingredient in Swedish food. Fresh fish, preserved fish, grilled fish, fish balls, fish stew, and so much more. And of course, surströmming, the infamous smelly fish. Surströmming is a bit of a delicacy these days. I don't really know why, but some people actually like it quite a lot. But it didn't start out like that. People needed the fish to keep, so they started to preserve it by salting it and fermenting it. Then they ate it for breakfast with knäckebröd, Swedish crisp bread. And I guess for lunch and dinner too. It wasn't that Swedes desired fermented herring. It was a way to survive, and you find that with many Swedish dishes in general. I mentioned nettle soup before, and you don't see many people eating nettles today, but it used to be a very popular dish. Not because the taste is amazing, but because it's available in the woods. And so is cloudberries, raspberries, lingonberries, and blueberries. Or rather, bilberries, because the Swedish blueberry isn't what English-speaking people refer to when they talk about blueberries. All of those are freely available in the woods, and even though many people pick them for fun these days, they used to be an important part of the Swedish diet back in the olden days. This is the Stockholm Food and Wine Expo, and to be honest, there's a lot of wine, and beer, and champagne, and liquor. But that makes sense because this is the Friday event, and it's more like a huge after work. It's a bit more quiet the other days if you want to be able to explore more. And they also have a lot of different talks and competitions, for example about Japanese desserts and the Swedish championships in sandwiches. And I just missed when they announced the Dessert Baker of the Year earlier today. And they say that Swedes don't like spices. Look at all these peppers and chilies and whatnot. This doesn't really have all that much to do with food, but I absolutely love those designs. Oh, that fox is so adorable. Tullamore Dew, quality blended Irish whiskey. I have fond memories of getting pissed drunk on a bottle of Tullamore Dew before going to punk concerts. As a kid. Not these days, as a kid. The fish balls look really nice, but I would never eat that. Fish is not really my cup of tea. The people at Vasa Fiskerien were really nice when they let me film as they were zesting the food. But sorry that I'm an anti-fish guy. I'm not really doing the best promotion for them. You have a cookbook for hungover people, but which one is your favorite recipe out of all of them?
Well, I have tons of favorites, but one of my absolute, go-to hangover foods is this one. It's the kebab pizza roll, which combines the kebab roll with the pizza. So you get the juiciness, but you also get that savory sort of oven-baked pizza feeling with lots of cheese and lots of spices, and that's where I want to go when I'm hungover.
Smart, share. What's this all about?
It's a recipe app where you can collect all your recipes and do different cookbooks with them, and you can shop your groceries easy when you have your recipes. So it's just an easy way to cook your dinners and plan your food.
Well, convenient. In that case, since you deal with recipes, I have to ask, do you have any favorite Swedish recipes?
I must say, my mom's Swedish meatballs is absolutely favorite, but I also love it like pies. So her meat pie is my favorite as well. And of course, you can see all recipes in Smakshare recipe app.
Do you think that there's any Swedish food that's exceptional?
Yes, I do. I think the Nordic cuisine is, and it's well known for its exceptional flavors from the nature with the wild and the berries and the wild meat and stuff. So I think that's a particular Swedish and Nordic taste that people are aware of. But also I think if you have seen the Swedish trend for candy, it's all over the TikTok, they're eating the lösgodis. It's extremely popular. And my kids are like, what? They're eating our candy. Leave it alone.
Swedish food is very seasonal, and it uses a lot of naturally occurring ingredients. It's also not very rich in spices. Most Swedish recipes only require some salt and pepper, at most. I understand why some people feel like food like that becomes bland, even though you could argue that it allows for the natural flavors to shine through. But another argument against Swedish food is that it's full of weird stuff. Flygande Jakob, Flying Jacob, is a dish from the 1970s that contains chicken, bacon, banana, peanuts, chili, and whipped cream. It's actually quite tasty, I like it, but I understand if it makes you question the Swedish sanity. The same goes for Swedish pizza. You of course have the classical Swedish kebab pizza, but also, for example, a pizza with ham, pineapple, banana and curry. You've probably heard of beef stroganoff, a very nice dish. But in Sweden, you're more likely to get sausage stroganoff with bland Falu sausage instead. But there's more. You can eat renskav, reindeer stew, or blood pudding, or Swedish dumplings. The big ones from up north are called palt, and the smaller ones from the south are called kroppkakor. It's a barley or wheat dough filled with pork, onions and allspice, so not all that strange to be honest. Swedish pancakes are also quite different from pancakes in many other countries. They're thin and more similar to crepes or blini than American pancakes, but they're bigger than blini and not filled like crepes. But even with all this variety, most traditional Swedish food is extremely simple. It's often meat and potatoes, or fish and potatoes, or a stew of some sort. And I guess that it's not really spiced all that much either. Salt was good enough for the Vikings, so it's good enough for us. Swedish food has actually had an impact on the world, and I'm not just talking about IKEA meatballs. The smorgasbord, or smörgåsbord in Swedish, is a buffet-style dining that even got its name from the Swedish word. But mostly I'd say that Swedish food is the one that's taken inspiration from international cuisine, especially lately. And maybe that's a good thing. Swedish food has a lot of focus on fresh and natural ingredients, so maybe a fusion of interesting flavors from abroad combined with the Swedish natural flavors can create something quite unique. And maybe some of that can be found here at the Stockholm Food and Wine Expo today. I mentioned that Swedish food doesn't use many spices. Well, things get a bit different when we're talking about desserts. Cinnamon buns, cardamom buns, and gingerbread are all very common in Sweden. There's also saffron buns and chocolate and different types of cake, and many of these actually have spices in them. It's almost like Swedish people don't really care about spices in food, but they put them all in desserts instead. I believe that the Swedish dishes you find today are remnants of everyday food that people ate hundreds of years ago. Poor people's food that became part of Swedish culture as the years went by. But the desserts are all pretty modern instead. They're from a time when people had access to spices and other luxury goods. And coffee, because coffee together with pastries or desserts is of course what makes up Swedish fika. I don't really need to talk more about Swedish fika because I'm pretty sure that you've already heard all about it. It's not just a coffee break, it's a mentality, it's a state of mind, and it's quintessentially Swedish. And it doesn't really have to be a coffee or a pastry either, it can even be a beer. I'll fight anyone who claims otherwise. If you want to try some Swedish food and you live abroad, well, then things might be a bit difficult for you. There aren't really many Swedish restaurants anywhere. That's unfortunately understandable given the reputation of Swedish food and the perceived blandness of it. But if you ever find yourself in Sweden, then you should try some husmanskost. That's the Swedish word for traditional Swedish food. It might be a bit difficult to find it though. You won't find many fancy Swedish restaurants, even in Sweden. Swedes eat Thai food and American and Italian, and they rarely go out to eat Swedish food in the evenings. But look around for Swedish food during lunchtime instead, especially on weekdays. You can almost always find lunch offers for traditional Swedish food, and it's a lot cheaper than at dinner time. So the next time you're in Sweden, give it a shot. Maybe you will find it bland and tasteless, but just maybe you'll enjoy the fresh and natural flavors. And with that, I'll wrap up this video about my visit to the Stockholm Food and Wine Expo. I hope you found it interesting. Like and subscribe, but most importantly, have a great day.